Kia ora. In today's headlines, the Prime Minister isn't expecting Solid Energy's partial float to proceed in this parliamentary term. Mr. John Key says partial privatization has always been about maximizing price returns, and Solid Energy simply isn't in the ideal shape to be sold right now.
They are obviously suffering under a depressed coal price, as is consistent with what we're seeing with other large coal producers around the world. So they are certainly not going to be ahead of Genesis and Meridian.
And the Prime Minister is disputing claims that a Defence Force request for better armoured vehicles from the Americans was rejected. He says he's been reassured our troops in Afghanistan have the equipment they need. Meanwhile, the Defence Minister is acknowledging troop morale there has taken a blow. Jonathan Coleman says soldiers had been keen to deploy to Bamiyan, but that's changed with 5 comrades lost in quick succession.
If you're in a group in an active deployment and you're losing mates, it's going to hit that group pretty hard.
The Serious Crash Unit, IPCA, and the coroner are to investigate a fatal car crash in South Auckland today involving a police car. An officer was en route to a Priority 1 emergency when the collision occurred on Ormiston Road, seriously injuring the other car's driver and his female passenger, who died in an ambulance on the way to hospital. British American Tobacco has launched a campaign against plain packaging rules today, claiming it will lead to a black market in cigarettes. Steve Rush accepts they sell a harmful product which should be regulated.
But we think this piece of regulation will actually foster the black market. And as the black market grows, you see smoking incidents increasing.
The Education Minister is seriously considering biometric IDs for teachers as suggested by an inquiry into identity fraud by sex offender Terito Miki. Hekia Parata is awaiting feedback from Internal Affairs and the Teachers' Council, but has welcomed the 35 proposals.
32 of which have been accepted, are being implemented or have already been implemented. I've asked for a report on the biometric identity checks.
ECPET Child Alert and security experts are endorsing biometric IDs for teachers. John Kendall of Unisys says it works like airport smart gate technology.
Could search against a watch list of known criminals, suspected terrorists, or in this case, a convicted sex offender.
And to international news, even as the battle between Syrian troops and rebel forces claimed 15 more lives today, a Syrian envoy to Moscow has raised the prospect of President Bashar al-Assad relinquishing his power. Since Barack Obama's warning to Damascus over chemical weapons, Russia has strongly discouraged interference in that country's politics. And the United States government says it's time that Sudan accepts an African Union plan to pull back troops from both sides of its contentious border with South Sudan. Officials say that could help move forward an agreement to restore oil exports. Meanwhile, widespread mental health problems have caught South Sudan unprepared. Despite almost 5 decades of civil war with the north, the young country does not have any psychiatrists. Medical staff have resorted to sedating or imprisoning the masses of post-war trauma patients to avoid further suicides. The West Nile virus has struck all over the continental U.S. in recent weeks, and Dallas, Texas in particular has suffered with 10 fatalities. Officials there are conducting ground and air fumigation, blanketing around 1,400 square kilometers of the county to target specific disease-carrying mosquitoes. The public is being asked to discard any containers with stagnant water that could breed the insects. In Guantanamo Bay, the military court hearings for 5 men charged over the September 11 attacks have been delayed due to an internet outage. Human rights groups say the suspects, including self-proclaimed mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, should be tried in civilian courts. The accused have previously refused to cooperate with military tribunal proceedings and allege they've been tortured. And finally, back home, the relationship between the Anglican Church and the Kingitanga movement remains strong. The Bishop of Te Manawa-o-Te-Wheke was part of the annual coronation celebrations for King Tuhetia in Ngaruawahia yesterday. Right Reverend Ngaruawahia says the connection was formed when the King movement first began in the 18th century.
From the time of the coronation, I think, when Tafi on them, because it was the Bible that crowned them, and that is when it started, that the hahi was incorporated within the Kingitanga.
Ka nui ngā karere mātua, mai te whare kōrero o rima, Maori ora.